Hello and welcome to Breakfast All Day. I am Matt. This is Christy. We are talking about a movie called The Hunt, which had been delayed.
It did.
As opposed to a bunch of movies that were supposed to be out this week and got delayed. This one is now opening this week. Maybe they should have delayed this one a little longer.
I don't know. So what's interesting with this, I don't know how it was in your theater last night. I went to a 7:00 showing at the top of the hill in Palos Verdes, and there were like 20 people there. I was shocked. I thought it was going to just be me.
Yeah, there were a bunch of other people there too, and it made me think like, oh, here I thought no one would be here, and I wouldn't run the risk of going to the theater and getting sick. But anyway.
I socially distanced myself. I sat where we always sit in the theater, and no one was near me. But I thought this kind of challenging movie on a Thursday when it's raining in the middle of a pandemic, no one's going to be there. But there was a lot of interest in The Hunt. And I wonder if that is because of the fact that it had been delayed. What? It was supposed to come out like 6 months ago, something like
maybe.
that. So this is from director Craig Zobel, whose films include Compliance. Have you seen Compliance?
I did not see Compliance. I heard it was amazing.
It is so good. And it's a movie that when I watched it, I was so angry. I was so infuriated watching it. And the more I thought about it, the more it stuck with me. And I realized how brilliant it was. And that is the mark of a really inspired filmmaker that can get that kind of response out of you. We see so many movies, and to have something like stick with me and change my mind is really unusual. So I'm a fan of Craig Zobel. And this movie got delayed because it was absolutely oversimplified in the description of what it was to such an extent that it got like right-wing media angry, including our president. Did he not tweet about this?
Maybe.
And so it's about, I mean, in its simplest form, if you want to give one line to describe it, it's about liberals hunting conservatives to kill them like once a year for sport. And that got everybody really angry because satire is hard.
Right. It's
satire is hard to comprehend.
It's the most dangerous game done with, this time the hunters are liberal elites who have picked people that they think are deplorables. One of them uses that word.
They never say the word Trump, by the way.
Right.
And they never say the word Republican, right?
I don't think so. Yeah. No, but they, yeah.
But clearly that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And so this movie got delayed way back. I somewhat wonder, did they do any reshoots? I don't know.
What makes you think they did reshoot? Because they had time?
Maybe. Although Jason Blum said they didn't do any changes.
This is written by Nick Cuse and Damon Lindelof, by the way.
They kind of should have done some changes.
Why do you think that?
Because I think it's kind of a mess.
Okay.
There's a side of me that wants to say, I don't think this movie knows what it's trying to say. And then I think, oh, maybe it's not trying to say anything. But then a little bit's like, then what's the point of doing satire if you're not trying to say anything? Except, if it's trying to say that there's idiots on both sides, which there absolutely are.
They are very much both sidesing it here. I agree.
I don't think they're doing it well enough. I don't think that especially like they are the liberal elite characters in this are not, I found myself more invested with some of the characters that were, certainly the hunted. The hunted. But the liberal elite characters are so one note.
They're caricatures.
Like they're caricatures, whereas at the very least, they're at least putting the hunted, like one of them is a podcast, like a crazy podcast
conspiracy
host.
Theorist.
Right. And, one is, this old vet, but they're given stuff to do that takes them out of what you would normally expect out of them.
And that's the point, right? Is to humanize the people that we place in a box as all being the same.
Right. And so it humanizes one set of characters but then it doesn't do anything with the other ones. And even if that's what it's trying to do, it doesn't do it in a way that has much impact. Right. And, now that being said, this movie gets carried by Gilpin, the
Betty Gilpin,
who was in Glow. And she's very good in this. And she immediately from note one, you see her acting differently than everyone else.
Well, who is she?
She plays Crystal, who's one of the hunted, right? And we find out, I don't want to give anything away, but she is far more competent than anyone else.
And smarter.
And smarter. And one of the things that's really fun about this movie is that, a lot of times that we've talked about this, the economy of casting, like, oh, somebody big in a movie, like, well, they're going to make it. No.
Maybe not.
No.
That is part of the fun of this.
Absolutely
It takes some
not.
chances in that regard. Like, that person's gone. Ooh, that's surprising.
Yeah. And that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. There's some good moments in this. I think they could have done something much sharper and much better, right? Like, especially knowing what Lindelof is capable of.
And Nick Cuse wrote some of the Watchmen episodes and not Walking Dead, Leftovers. So he's worked with Damon Lindelof before.
And these guys are capable of great stuff. And this felt like, this really feels like some half-baked idea that they got someone to, they got Blumhouse to make a movie about. And
Universal's releasing it.
Right.
It's a big studio.
And it's a little like, guys, you needed to really work on this. Rather than just kind of throw it out there, go back and spend some time with this. And you actually could have had something that I think that this idea could have approached something like Cabin in the Woods.
So you think they softened it? Your suspicion is that they softened it in the time between when it was supposed to have come out and when it is now coming out, and they've the teeth aren't as sharp, is what you're suggesting.
No, I that would be the easy way to say it. I don't think they actually did that because a guy if Jason Blum has gone on the news and said, or gone into interviews and said nothing's been changed, and there would be proof of that, right?
That's true.
There would be
of reshoots,
right? Somebody would have been able to dig that news up, and there haven't been. And so, did they cut stuff out? Maybe, but it seems like maybe there wasn't enough in the script there to begin with, right? And if we just want to go with the simplest answer, it is only 90 minutes long, which feels like maybe they cut some stuff out.
It moves too. It's really quick.
But it does move. Yeah. The action's relatively well staged.
There's a pretty gnarly fight scene at the end.
Right. And it's not a total disaster. I guess what's frustrating is this is a movie that, this idea of, the idea of, because this is something that you don't see in Hollywood a lot, right? And it is somewhat bold to say, oh, look, there are people on the left, and there absolutely are. There are people on the left that are just as despicable as there are on the right. There are people that are, and I'm not trying to say that everybody on the right is despicable. There are despicable people
everywhere,
no matter what you believe, right? There are despicable people on both sides. And the idea of doing a movie like this, that there could have been a much sharper, and again, a much sharper satire. And I go back to Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods, skewers what an audience expects out of a horror movie and riffs on audience expectations and kind of points a finger at all of us. And I think that this movie could have done that. And in a way that honestly Gamer does better in certain cases.
What's that?
Gamer was the movie with, what's his name from 300?
Gerard
Butler, where he's in the game and everybody's...
I don't remember that.
Yeah, he's like a convict. Yeah, he's this convict and he gets put in a video game where it's controlled by actual people and right? Or something like Total Recall, right? Total Recall does that as well. This could have been something that has that level of really sharp social satire, and it just feels a little dashed off.
So for me, this reminded me quite a bit as I was watching it and thinking about it afterward. It reminded me of The Interview. Remember The Interview with Seth Rogen and James Franco, and they go to North Korea?
Yeah.
Right. And there was also a movie that was postponed. Right. And there's also a movie about which there was a great deal of hoopla and concern.
Right. And then it's
and then it came out and it was that was it. And it's hard to walk into a movie like this where there has been a lot of coverage, where there has been a lot of controversy, and not view it purely for its content. It's hard to walk into it without the expectations of the buzz that, preceded it.
Right.
And so I feel that's it. They take, I laughed quite a bit throughout. I really did, but they take some kind of affectionate shots at, liberal mindset. They're the people who are doing this, the shooters, the hunters, are all trying to one up each other about their charity projects they're doing about, who liked their tweet, and they're all kind of assholes. They're all like rich and arrogant, and you wouldn't want to hang out with them, but there's like a smug kind of superiority to them. And then some of the people, the quote unquote deplorables who get rounded up, they're jerks too. And in the middle is Betty Gilpin, who, finds a great balance of smarts and physicality, and is the only one who feels like a real person. I mean, she's the only one who's also afforded the screen time to feel like one.
Right.
She's in the entire movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I laughed a lot. I appreciated the daring of the idea, and I appreciated, the choreography of this big major fight scene at the end. And I don't want to say who she fights with, because I think it's a bit of a surprise to find out who is actually behind all of this. So
although if you've looked at the cast list,
for those of you who think we spoil things, I'm not going to spoil
Right.
this. And so that is enjoyable in its casting for quite a few reasons. But I walked away like that was enjoyable, but maybe didn't have as sharp a teeth as it could have.
Yeah, that's the thing is I look at this as like, oh, you guys could have done something really awesome here, especially given the pedigree of the filmmakers and writers. And it's a little like...
Compliance gets more at what Craig Zobel is trying to say about society and about the deepest reaches of ourselves that we don't want to acknowledge than this does. Compliance is deeply disturbing. And so I think you can see maybe what he was aiming for here. And I really like him. But yeah, it feels like it pulls its punches a little bit. Anyway, so my number is 6.5.
Yeah, I'm at a 4.5. I was really frustrated with this one.
Okay, so we're saying 5.5. It is worth seeing.
Yeah.
I would say if you're curious about it, it is worth seeing just to see what all the hoopla is about.
Yeah.
And see if you think that's merited. It's always better to have information.
Right.
I tell myself after
I've lectured you about not being on Twitter all day.
Deleting Twitter and not listening to MSNBC in my car. I do think being informed is helpful. So anyway, that is it for us for film reviews for this week. I do not have an a la carte next week.
Okay.
I do not. I might be...
It's probably a smart move.
Yes, I might be pulling back on the a la cartes a little bit.
Well,
and
now is the perfect time to do that.
And that was before the coronavirus, but I'm working on a book, which I will tell you guys about later on once it gets announced, but something has to give. Like, I'm not taking a book leave to write this thing. And so I've got to find the time. If you guys missed it, the last one I did was with a guy named Jake Tremblay, who is a production designer. It was a really fun interview.
Not Jacob Tremblay.
No, I loved him in Room. Yes, he gets that all the time. But Jake Tremblay, and I had never had a production designer on before. And it was really cool to learn what all he does, because it's a lot more than just building sets and gathering props. Like, there's so much that he's in charge of in terms of transportation and making sure people on set are safe with the things that he is building. One of the things he worked on is a music video for this Pentatonics cover of God Only Knows by the Beach Boys. And they shot it inside this airport, and they wanted it to snow inside the airport. So there are machines that make fake snow, but do you know what it's made out of? It's
asbestos.
Like, no, but close.
How'd that go? As best as can be expected.
Too soon for the dad jokes. No, it's cut up little pieces of like styrofoam, like packing peanuts.
Okay.
And they blow them up in the air, and they get diffused down, and it looks like nice, lightly snow falling.
But if people breathe them.
But if you breathe it in. So he's also in charge of things like physical safety. So I learned a lot, and he's a really sweet, funny guy. He was homeschooled till the 8th grade. Anyway, he's a good story. So he's the last one. If you have missed any of them, they're all there on our Patreon and on our website, if you're on Apple or Spotify, they're all there. So I love doing them, but I might have to take a little bit of a break and just do them sporadically here and there. But everything we do is, of course, out there on our Patreon, on all of our little web pages. This week on our Patreon, we're going to do the last couple of episodes of The Outsider and McMillions, and we're going to eventually do Westworld. If you want to join our Patreon, like us, please like us, and follow us in all the places where you can follow people. Even if you have deleted Twitter from your phone, as Matt thinks you all should.
Yes.
At BFest All Day is a place you can find us by carrier pigeon or stone tablet.
Exactly.
Thank you all so much, and be safe and wash your hands and drink lots of water and get lots of sleep and take care of each
And
other.
have lots of Coronas. Wait, no.
Take care of each other. Thank you.
Yes, take care of each other.
Bye.
But not too closely.
Hugs from far away.
Yes.
Bye.
Yeah, air hugs.
Bye.
Bye.